What a warm and lovely way to begin our worship. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone here in the sanctuary and those who are joining us online this morning. I'm Reverend Bill Sinkford. My pronouns are he and him, and I am deeply blessed to be one of the ministers at All Souls Unitarian for this coming year. The words of James Baldwin: "Nothing is fixed forever, forever, forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. The sea rises and the light fails. Lovers cling to one another and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out."
Welcome to the sanctuary of the Spirit, where we hold each other and where each week we kindle the flame of our chalice to keep the light alive. Come now and let us worship.
Hello, and welcome to All Souls Church. My name is Justice Tuya. I use he, they pronouns, and today I am honored to serve as your worship associate. Welcome to a community where our search for spirituality, our passion for social justice and communal action, and a need to find respite at times with others of similar mind and heart meet and mingle, where reverence for the earth and a belief in the dignity of every person informs our ethics, where the arts are expressions of our joy, prayer, meditation, and mindfulness signs of our faith, and acts of justice symbols of our hope. Welcome to a place where all people are welcome at the table of love and fellowship. We again gather here in the sanctuary and remotely from various locations here in the DC region and from various locations around the world. Regardless of whether you're a lifelong member, someone who has joined us off and on over the years, or someone that happened to stumble across us for the very first time, you are welcome here. We'd like to offer a warm All Souls welcome to those of you who are visiting. If you're willing and able, please either stand, raise your hand, or otherwise make yourself known so that we may acknowledge you. Do we have any visitors today? Welcome. If you're interested in examining today's order of service, you can click on the link in the chat, or if you're here in the sanctuary and did not get a printed order of service, there are QR codes located on the backs of the pews in front of you. To stay up to date on all upcoming offerings of the church community, please read the weekly church bulletin that's typically released every Friday by email. And if you're not currently subscribed to receive the weekly bulletin, you're more than welcome to sign up via the church website, or if you're online, you can click on the link in the chat. All Souls recognizes that our city was built on lands taken from indigenous people. We remember this great loss. The closest village to our church site was Nacotchtank, from which the name Anacostia is derived. The residents were part of the Piscataway group of tribes that were present here in the DC and Maryland region. Let's take a moment of silence to reflect on the lands of the indigenous peoples where we each reside. Life has changed for each of us over the last several years. In our community, the way in which we worship and how we engage with one another has evolved with it. For example, our greeting has become a beholding in person and virtually. If you are joining us online, I'd encourage you at this time to turn on your video, scroll through the gallery view, and although you'll remain on mute, please exchange smiles, waves, and chats as you draw strength and joy from the gallery of faces, both old and new. If you're here in the sanctuary, I'd encourage you to get up, to move around, and to greet one another in a manner that is comfortable for both you and those that you're greeting. Let us greet one another now. Thank you very much. Let's continue our conversations and greetings after the service. And again, welcome to All Souls Church.
I think I'm next. Hello, All Souls. I am Rob Keithan, your Minister of Social Justice, and I use he, him pronouns. Bring you greetings on this glorious August morning here in Washington, D.C. We have just a few announcements today. First and foremost, we are currently recruiting for one of the most important, meaningful, and fun roles at the church, teaching in the children's religious education program. Training and support is provided, so you don't need any special experience or skills, just a willingness to spend time learning with and from some of the younger souls in our congregation. Contact our Director of Children's Religious Education, Dolores Miller, if you are interested. Second, we are also seeking volunteers to help support the critical work of Food Justice DMV, which delivers much-needed food, diapers, and more to our migrant neighbors in the DMV. All Souls member Denise Woods is a founder and key leader in Food Justice DMV, and they are a Beckner Fund grant recipient and key ongoing community partner in our social justice ministry. They view delivering food as an important way to stand in solidarity with folks who face systemic racism and unjust exclusion from governmental support. They need people with cars on Saturdays and Tuesdays, as well as loaders and baggers if you don't have a car. See the weekly email bulletin for more information. Third, at a time when LGBT individuals and families are under attack in so many places, we want All Souls to be a place of support and solidarity. To that end, we are working to reinvigorate part of the church community, the Rainbow Souls. Rainbow Souls is a group of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, questioning, intersex, asexual, agender, and allies who are part of the All Souls community. Email Rose Eaton to join the mailing list and find out about future gatherings and events. We move now to our community and congregational concerns. But I'm self-conscious. Is the anthem now? Did I mess that up? No? I'm good? Okay. Sorry, sometimes there's just like this nagging doubt that's getting louder and louder. Okay, great. Back on track. Once again, it is my pleasure to, on behalf of All Souls, issue a warm, warm welcome to Reverend Bill Singford. Who started just 2 weeks ago as our transitional minister for the upcoming church year. All Souls is extremely fortunate to have Bill with us, and although he's been preaching regularly as our minister in residence this past year, today is his first time preaching in his new full-time role. I've had the honor of knowing Bill for more than 20 years now, including happily working for him and with him for 8 years when he was president of our Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. So it is my pleasure to say welcome again, Bill, and I am so very grateful for this opportunity to serve with you yet again. One celebration and a few thoughts and prayers for our congregation today. First, Kathy Ferger is pleased and proud to share that her son, Chapalo Street, won a primary race to represent the 37th Legislative District in the Washington State House of Representatives. We offer congratulations to Chapalo, as well as our appreciation for the willingness to run for and serve in public office. Our thoughts are with All Souls long-distance member Tricia Dwyer Morgan, who lives in Lano, Texas. that how you say that, Lino? Trisha is a former town librarian who is responding to the extensive banning of books in that community and the resulting public conflict. So we send Trisha courage and resilience as she resides in this inflamed situation. And finally, our condolences are with David Lindsay, one of our longtime front desk staff whose cousin Viola died unexpectedly in Jamaica of a seizure. This is the 5th family loss in 3 months for David and his family. And in addition, David's mother has been diagnosed with COVID in an outbreak in her Florida nursing home. So we send healing prayers to her, and we hold David and his whole extended family as they wrestle with yet another loss. In the silence that follows, I invite you to speak aloud or type into the chat the names of those you carry on your hearts this day. Please join me in prayer. Great Spirit of life, abiding love, we gather both in person and virtually to recenter ourselves around what is truly important in our lives and in our world. We gather to breathe, we gather to be, we gather to be together. We gather to breathe, we gather to be, we gather to be together. We gather to breathe, we gather to be, we gather to be together. Amen.
don't we come back to the anthem after the reading and before the sermon? Our reading this morning is entitled God Knows My Name by the Reverend Kiyama Rahman, whom some of you may know. She writes, God knows my name. She hears me in the midnight hour and all through the day. I speak my name and give thanks and spit my name into the vast oceans and roaring seas that carry my name into the majestic presence of the Most High. God knows my name. I give thanks and shout-outs all through the day to the Most High. In moments of grace, when I am brokenhearted and feeling rejected and discouraged, in times of celebration and jubilation, in my every waking moment, in gratitude, I call the names of God, Yah, Allah, Jehovah, Yahweh. Like my ancestors before me and before them, and down through the ages, Spirit, God knows my name. God knows my DNA. God knows every cell in my body. God knows the number of molecules in my skin and the placement of every bone in my skeleton, every wart and every mole. Spirit knows my name, and I know the names of the Most High. God knows my name. God knows my name. Qiyama Rahman is bearing witness to her connection with the Spirit of life, her connection to the power of the universe. She bears witness to an intimacy with that Spirit that knows every cell of her body, an intimacy at the molecular level. And the only way to respond to such intimacy and such power is with thanks and with praise, to call the names of God as the ancestors have from time out of mind. God knows my name, she says. Is that how you know the Spirit of life? I use the language of God as Qiyama does, but there are so many names. Don't let the name get in your way of the question. Is that how you know the Spirit? Is that how this all works for you? This is the universalist side of our religious family tree speaking. The early universalists who found a God of love in the Christian scriptures and who knew the presence of that love in their lives. A God of power, but not of punishment, a God of love. No need to earn that love. There's nothing you have to do. A love that is simply given. Because God is love, and love is just what God does. Now, we put all kinds of obstacles to that love in our lives. That is true. So did those early universalists. They believed people needed a change of heart, a conversion to know that love in their lives. But that love for them was always there, because that is how this all works. That was, and that still is, the universalist theology. Theology, so that literally just means the study of God. It feels like such a big word, I know, but it is really just about how we think all of this works, this life we are living. And there's more than one idea about that, just to be clear. There's a quote on the table down there in front of the sanctuary from William Ellery Channing, one of the founders of American Unitarianism, the other great taproot of our religious family tree. Those of you who have been members here over the years can probably recite it from memory. I am a living member of the family of all souls. The family of all souls. You can hear the similarity to the universalist ideas, can't you? All souls, the universalists would say, amen. God's love flows to each and every one of us. Yes, amen. Did you know that amen just means yes? All souls, amen, they would say. And the early Unitarians did know a relationship to the Spirit of life. One of Channing's most widely read sermons was titled, Likeness to God. Wow. Channing's point was that we have the capacity to become more like God, more God-like, by devoting ourselves to self-improvement. Self-culture is what he called it. Are you beginning to hear some subtle but important differences between the Universalists and the Unitarian views of the world? The Universalists said, there is nothing you have to do to earn God's love, not a thing. The Unitarians talked about self-improvement. For the Unitarians, it was not so much about God's love as about our capacity, our power. It's called human agency in theological speak, our ability to shape our lives and to shape our world. The early Unitarians knew God. They knew the Spirit of life, but the God they knew was more like a distant creator God who had set things in motion. That God was not an intimate presence in their lives. The God they knew was more like a watchmaker, creating the gears in the watch and the relationship of the gears. Do you remember when watches had gears? Do you remember when we wore watches? A watchmaker setting each equation, as one of our favorite hymns describes it. God set the universe in motion, governed by certain rules, and our job as human beings is to understand those rules so that we can shape our world. The world is here for us to use. There are complexities in this view of the world, just as there are complexities in the God is love view. Where does evil and violence fit into that view? But the Unitarian worldview is much more about us and our abilities. So let me ask about that notion. Is that how you think this all works? It is about what we do. Is it about what we do and how we shape our lives and our world? Is that how this all works in your life, in the world as you know it? The faith that we embrace today, this Unitarian Universalism, that very long name, tries to hold both of those notions, both the intimacy and the agency. We joke about this as a blended family of faith. The early Unitarians were privileged and educated, white, needless to say, at least in the beginning. The Universalists were more working class and less privileged, white too, all but a few of them. We say that the Universalists believed that their God of love was far too good to damn them to hell, while the Unitarians, well, they believed that they were too good to be damned. Now, I've drawn that distinction between those two pretty sharply as a kind of a rigid binary, and there was always a good deal of overlap, more and more over time, both in theology and eventually even in membership. But the truth is that this faith has been working to hold both of those theological points of view since those two faiths merged in 1961, and in some sense, we are still trying to figure out how to hold them both. How does all of this work? In my 30s, after some success in the corporate world, I struck out on my own as a small-scale housing developer, a rehabber, really. It was very much hands-on for me, and I loved being able to create spaces of use for people and some beauty even with my own hands, my own imagination. I was living in the Unitarian side of our theology. I relied on my own agency, my hands, literally, to build a life for me and my young family and to make a contribution to the communities in which I lived. I came of age in the era of Camelot and the successes of the civil rights movement. That's just history for some of you, but it was a time when it was easy for many folks to believe in our power to make things better. Optimism seemed justified. It's much more challenging today. This was in 1979, 1980, a long time ago, but some of you will remember those years. Today is not the first time that inflation has been a problem for us. And like most startup businesses, mine was underfinanced, and there simply was not enough cash to carry the cost as interest rates spiked over 15%. And I had to declare a personal bankruptcy. It was devastating for me. Some of you have had big reverses in your life, many of you perhaps, and you know what I'm talking about. It led to a kind of crisis of faith. Not only did I not trust my inherent worth and dignity, God's love was the last thing that I was feeling. At the time, I was an active lay leader in my home church in Cincinnati, Ohio. Like some of you, I'd served in just about every role, The church had become a central part of my life and the life of my young family. One evening, at an NAACP dinner when I was at my most depressed, our minister turned to me and asked, "Have you ever considered becoming a minister, Bill?" And I knew right then, in that instant, what I would do, though I had no idea where the decision to answer that call to ministry would eventually take me, that it would lead that failed businessman to become a religious leader, that young man whose life seemed to be falling apart, who was not feeling the love of God. It would lead me to stand in this pulpit, preaching about how the world works and trying to offer you all a word of hope. I had no idea. But I went to seminary at Starr King School for the Ministry in Berkeley, California. I had personal and spiritual healing to do, and I was guided there by so many teachers and mentors on the faculty, among my fellow students, in my work in the Oakland community. And I spent time at the Baptist seminary nearby as well, where there was a community of black ministers that held me in care. But it was Rebecca Parker, whom many of you may know, who served as one of the ministers at All Souls a few years ago. It was Rebecca, who was then the new president of the school, who asked me, who invited me, who challenged me to realize that my business failure and my personal failings, none of them changed the reality that I was still loved. She did not ask me directly. It was not that kind of a thing, not in those words precisely, but my heart had been broken open by my failure, and I heard in her words and from her presence the theology that I needed to hear. Her words. Even when our hearts are broken by our own failure or the failure of others cutting into our lives, even when we have done all we can and life is still broken for us, there is a universal love that has never broken faith with us and never will. We have but to ask and we shall receive, as the choir sang earlier. A love that has never broken faith with us and never will. I wanted to believe. I did. Healing my broken heart depended on it, but the evidence of the world, how can that love be real when there is so much pain and so much punishment out there in the world? How does this all work? Imagine, if you can, a world like that watchmaker world, where there are rules and relationships that are already set. A world we did not create but enter into. It is given to us. But imagine this world not outside of us at all, not waiting for our agency to act on it and shape it, waiting for us to use it, not that at all. Imagine our being a part of this world in ways that are as intimate as breath, connected to it, living through it, our lives growing out of it and into it. Intimate. God knows my name. And because of that intimacy, that world impacts us. It asks us to react. It challenges us. It inspires us. That world is always changing us. And we are always changing that world because what we do impacts others all of the time. Imagine this as a process of constant creation. Imagine your life as a progression of one creative act after another. Imagine living as a part of a constant process of creation. Imagine yourself as an artist. There is space in this imagination for that love the Universalists knew. The possibility of that love is there in this space of creation. That love is there because we are there somehow. And I cannot describe for you exactly how this all works. There is truth that some of this remains in mystery. But I can tell you that that love has been present for me, and I can tell you that that love can be present for you. And there's also space in this imagination for our agency and the Unitarian faith that we can build that city on the hill, the beloved community of which we speak. There is space in that imagination for that too. This is all called process theology, and it points to a world of both agency and intimacy. This is a world in which power is measured by impact, not position, and in which neither punishment nor reward wait for some next life. They flow naturally into this one, into this very real life in which we live. There is so much that I look forward to preaching for you and exploring with you. How love calls us to the work of justice, and how the belief in our agency gives us the energy to make love real in the world. How that love is always there for us. How it makes real forgiveness for ourselves and even reconciliation after harm and violence. It makes that a possible dream. How perversions of power can be confronted from a place grounded in love, how that love can move in us with power to transform as well as to comfort and to console. How accountability is a primary truth of life that we need to embrace. How the structures of oppression and the operation of privilege that press down on so many of us can be shifted by the practice of courage and love in our lives. How this faith has been traditionally liberal, but itself can be transformed into a message of liberation for us all. How the various faith traditions of the human family ask similar and different questions. There is so much I look forward to exploring with you. But there's one more thing I need to say before I close this sermon. When I made the decision to change my life and go to seminary, it was my congregation that held me through that change. Person after person told me what a good decision I was making, how they'd seen a minister in me all along, even if they hadn't. These were people who knew me. They knew my failures, but they also knew my gifts. And they wrote letters of recommendations. They even raised money to help with that first year's tuition. The love that the early Universalists proclaimed does not move just in church, of course. It moves everywhere and all the time. But there's a role for religious community. There's a role for this church. This sanctuary of the Spirit is where we come with intention to be renewed and reminded of what we value most. And this faith is not for the faint of heart. To believe in the power of love in the face of so much violence and hatred in the world, that's a lot to ask. But here, in this place, with these people, we open our hearts and somehow we discover that love can be real. That the kingdom has in fact already come, that the kingdom can be real right here and right now. This sanctuary of the Spirit is where we hold one another and help one another, this church of all souls, where we gather the Spirit to work for justice and bring our hurting hearts to the altar of life, striving to trust that love. We fall short, of course we do, but we are called back again and again. Because in Baldwin's words, the moment we cease to hold each other, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. This diverse, spirit-growing, justice-seeking community of all souls calls us to shout out our thanks and praise, because this is where we build the world we dream about. This is where we can devote our lives to the creation of a community worthy of being called beloved, where we can create a life that we truly want to live. May that be so, and amen.
So I came out of the closet on Thanksgiving break of 2007. My family, to their credit, have always been, from that very moment, incredibly accepting of me. Sure, there have been missteps over the years, but they've never stopped trying to learn more about me and to share more in my experience and reality as a gay man. I grew up in the Mormon and Catholic churches. It wasn't always easy engaging in either community due to the inherent disconnect which existed between who I was and what is still predominantly being taught from their pulpits. However, it was in these spaces that I first came to embrace the notion of eternal families and the importance of service. And while I no longer maintain any direct ties to either of these faith communities, I still believe, for what it's worth, in eternal families. Families that are sealed together with a love that exists beyond time. Unitarian Universalism has taught me that family includes all of the messy and beautiful iterations of relationships that shape our lives over the years. I believe that we create these forever families when we do and say things that foster feelings of inclusion and build others up in their truths, when we support every family member's best efforts to live honest, compassionate, meaningful lives, and when we do the hard work of creating heaven here on earth. We create forever families when we foster an environment and belief systems that both include every member of the great family of all souls and pushes no one outside the circle of acceptance and love. I believe that love is what seals us into the eternities. There is no other litmus test that I can think of that is more appropriate. So let love be our guide, and let love be our judge in all we do. This community is my spiritual home. It's a place where people of similar mind and heart remind me of why I'm here and the role that I'm called to play while I'm here in this existence, especially when the odds seem to be stacked against the love that we seek to put into the world. Each Sunday before the offering plates pass, I attempt to name the many gifts that this congregation has bestowed upon me, and it's for these reasons that I give generously to our community. As the virtual and physical plates pass today, I ask you to consider the ways in which you can sustain this community through your financial contributions. All Souls needs your promise of time, talent, and treasure to support the staff, programs, and the search for our next called minister or ministry team, especially in this season of summer vacation and rest. We may be in and out of town, and things may slow down for each of us, but the community and the commitments that we've made still need to be supported, met, and honored. Contributions can be made online or in person, and no gift is too big or too small. If you're on Zoom, the link in the chat will direct you to the All Souls online giving page, and you may also text ASCU to 73256 to make your offering. Thank you in advance for your generosity, and today's offering will now be received.
Oh, yes, we've got tears and we've got pain. That is all true. But we've also got joy and we've got strength. And we've got that love that has never broken faith with us. Is it possible, just possible, that we have all we need? Just possible that the kingdom can be here in our lives and in our hearts? That this is how that all really does work. And that in this faith, if it's doing its job and we are doing ours, this faith helps us trust that love so that we can, by our living, make that love real. May that be so. Amen. Ashe. Amin. May that be so. Amen.